And again, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are in the world. And thanks for joining everyone. Welcome to this 8th episode of Insights Live from Space Store. My name's Alex Harvey and I'm VP Sales here. And I'd like to thank you all for joining Space Store this afternoon. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. It's been really important to us that even in today's current situation, the global crisis that we're all in, that we're able to continue the work that we do, connecting and sharing the insights that we have with you all. Our clients, the dealers and designers and architects that we work with, the colleagues and friends that we work with. So this webinar platform is a great tool and we're really glad to be able to use it. Even if we can't meet with you face to face, that we can still continue to connect with you and be with you all. And we've had hundreds attend this webinar series so far. And we're looking forward to continuing to see you join us each week. We can share some further webinar dates with you towards the end of today's session. Now, before we get stuck in, I noticed from the attendee list, there's many who know Space Store well and who we know well, but there are also some maybe who are new to Space Store. So let me tell you our story. So firstly, and very importantly, here are some of the great clients that we're privileged to work with at Space Store. And as you'll see, these are brands and products that you and your family use on a day-to-day basis. And they cover all industry verticals and a wide variety of geographical locations globally. And one thing you'll notice is that many of these are the world's leading tech companies: Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Salesforce, some of the most creative and innovative companies in the world. And working with these clients to co-create workplace solutions is a great privilege for us, and it's a great experience too, and it continues to influence our development and our innovation. And then if we move on to our strapline, California Cool and London Design, and these are the two core influences that encapsulate who we are. So London Design speaks of our background in London for over 35 years, creating customizable modular workplace furniture. And then the establishment of our Californian presence in 2012. So California Cool includes the long history of innovation and vision of this region, right from the gold rush in the 1800s through to Silicon Valley and the tech world today. And this has influenced who we are and the products we create. Now, if we bring this up to date to 2020, I'd like to introduce our New York Design Center to you. One of the key things for Space Store this year was the opening of our global flagship location in New York in February, right before the global lockdown took over. So that was the last major event for Space Store. And then since then, the last 8 weeks, we've been locked down at home. But we're really pleased that this space has been recognized as a finalist for the NYC by Design Awards. And then before we get into the content for today, I also wanted to touch on our new lookbook. Experiential Spaces is a volume that we've created to showcase some of the best projects we've worked on, including some really great content, some insights, some fantastic photography of projects. And we're offering you the chance to win your own copy of this high quality book today. Now, what I'd like to put out there is that in my role as VP Sales at Space Store, I'm always curious to hear about the big subjects that you're thinking about. So the future of work following COVID-19 is something that everyone is looking at. We're all hearing numerous panel discussions and webinars about it, and everyone's speculating about it. But what I'd love to do is hear your views around what are the top unanswered challenges you see with the post-COVID workplace. So as we stand right now, what are the questions that you think haven't been answered? And if you could put those into the Q&A box at the bottom while the webinar is running, and then we're going to select a lucky winner from the suggestions we've received. And of course, as we go through, we also want to answer your questions and any comments or thoughts that occur to you. So please put them into the Q&A box as we go through today's presentation, and we'll aim to spend a few minutes at the end answering them. Now, I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists on the webinar today. So we have my colleague Nick Stedman, VP Marketing, and then we also have Andrew Baxter, our Sales Manager for the UK. So, right, let's get stuck into today's topic. So we're focusing on the forecasted work trends that Space Store have been looking at over the past couple of years and applying these to the post-pandemic scene. So based on the insights, the extensive research that we've done, speaking with leading industry experts and the discussion panels that we've been hosting over the last 8 weeks, we're looking at which of the trends we have identified we'll see accelerating through COVID-19 and which will be maybe negatively impacted, which will be slowing down or maybe disappearing, because the return to the workplace is very imminent, or in some regions already happening. And there's a huge amount of speculation as to what the workplace is going to look like when we return, how it's going to change. So Andrew, could I hand over to you now, and you can start discussing the first trend. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. Great intro. And hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Baxter. Know a lot of you, but good to be here today. And we wanted to really cover these 6 trends as trends that are accelerating or even more relevant as a result of the situation we find ourselves in globally. And then we'll come on to the ones that are perhaps more challenged or less relevant just right now. We're sure they'll bounce back and a key part of the workplace. So the first is user experience. Now, we all know roughly what this means, but in terms of the workplace, what's behind this is really that as human beings, we need to interact with people. We need to engage with people and to feel engaged with a culture, with an organization, or with a group. And we believe that an immersive brand experience is going to be very, very important in the days ahead. Something that fosters community and encourages connection. And I think leading employers will continue to recognize this in their quest for continuing to recruit top talent, and especially the digital talent. So how will it change? Well, we think that creating an enticing workplace, and a workplace experience that really draws workers there, will be very important, a high priority, and that's going to become quite intense. There's obviously an increase in distributed work, which is to be expected with the current situation. That will mean that a lot of us, when we're present in the workplace, it will be for fewer hours. So when we do go to the office to do the things that we need to do from the office, and in terms of collaboration, other things like that, that can't be done as effectively or as naturally from a remote situation, the workspace needs to be much more memorable. It needs to be much more impactful, an impactful experience which really overcomes any fear or anxiety we may have, the workforce in general may have, as to our personal safety. So we've used for a while the phrase the workplace as a destination, and this was really the meaning of this was that staff want to come into the workplace, and that's what's behind having a great and culture building and engaging workspace for your staff. So with this in mind, do and will employees consider their workspace that they are assigned to work in, or workplaces, as a second safe haven, you might say, a second safe space outside of their home? So clearly the commute or the journey to work will have an effect here. So it differs for all of us. It could be 5 minutes, it could be an hour and a half, it can involve trains, buses, ferries, lots of different scenarios, and where you are, if that's the public transport, the tube or the metro, whatever that is. So suburban campuses are going to be popular for larger organisations, and whatever your travel to work, your commute to work is like, clearly if that's more local, that could be by car, by bike, you could walk, whichever easier means of transport, or you may even continue full-time from home, maybe. And that's obviously right for some and not so good for others. But public transport is obviously not being advised to be used here in the UK right at the minute, and quite likely people aren't particularly attracted to use it either. But practically some need to use that to get to their office. However, like some of the large banking organisations at the minute, maybe making use of a more local high street branch or a more local homely feel space is more suitable, and a hub and spoke type strategy to work. So I think we'll see that developing. And then you've got the 3 different environments as we see them. So you've got home working, and what that is, and we've all experienced that to a greater or lesser extent. Some of us still in that mode, and to be fair, it's going very well. Then you've got what bridges the gap between the physical workspace and the home is that virtual collaborative environment, which has to connect with both the home and the workplace. Now, clearly, technology is going to develop further. It's already good, but it will develop further to aid what's going to have to be a seamless integration of that 3-space situation. It's very, very important. So if you can imagine, you're in the office, maybe a percentage of your team are back, but like before, you're still trying to bring in people from other locations who have always been in another location, as well as your team that are currently still working from home or on a rota basis. It's going to be really, really important that tech is seamlessly integrated and developed to provide that user experience. Just one example here, we're launching very soon our Residence Max product. So that's a larger, more generous single-person pod, which has really been designed around the user experience for the ultimate video conferencing, video call situation. So you've got adjustability within there to suit the user, and it's more generously spaced, so you may well be in there for a 45-minute, hour-long call, and you should come out not feeling any worse off. If nothing else, you've been in that oasis of refreshment while you're having that video call in a safe space, but in a functional space. I'll now hand back to Alex, who's going to pick up on our next trend.
Great, thanks, Andrew. So the next trend we want to talk about was perpetual beta or beta, depending on where you are in the world. Now, what this means, or what this was we identified, was that organizations have a continuous approach of experimentation and improvement. And what that means within the workplace is the effect of altering work practices, maybe as workforces change or organizations change, they're able to evolve their workplace to reflect that. And what we've seen that, how we've seen that happening for many of our clients is by using the modular furniture as architecture within architecture, or as I heard it recently, furnitecture, that can be reconfigured as many times as you like. What really matters is how that workplace is going to be used over time. So the design is really a process of natural evolution from the start point when that space was originally designed, but it results in the space always being better suited to the needs of the users today. So how's that going to change? I've seen this as a hugely important design approach that applies really to the immediate return of the workforce. With all the rapid innovation and development of physical barriers that may give workers a sense of safety, I think the workspace landscape is going to look considerably different. And whilst these may mitigate the fears of personal safety being at risk, it may take a while for the workforce, for people to really adapt and feel comfortable in the space. So organizational flexibility and resilience is going to be essential for organizations to be successful in the post-pandemic era. And the workplace is going to be one huge experiment. We've already partaken in one big experiment, the work from home experiment, but we are already engaging with many of our clients who are demonstrating a huge amount of creativity and an open-minded approach to what the new workplace is going to be like. This is a great opportunity for organizations to experiment and try something new and different, because there's going to be a balancing act between the hygiene and safety concerns of employees, and then, if you like, counter to that, fostering human connection, a sense of community, building a more intense, impactful experience. And as the workforce returns, the space itself has to have a flexible structure to reconfigure and reinvent the best space for the next era of the workplace. So a highly adaptable environment that's really based on user needs is going to be key to evolving successfully in a post-pandemic climate. Andrew, I'll hand back to you now, if you can take us through our next trend.
Thanks, Alex. So yes, we wanted to touch on the next trend, which is tech fusion. Now this is a big thing, and clearly the tech industry, the Silicon Valley giants are leading the way in workspaces embracing new and disruptive technologies, but in an integrated way. So bringing those together and connecting workplace facilities, there's huge amounts of data which feed into making intelligent choices. So how we see this changing is that we see this definitely being accelerated. The virtual environment needs to be embraced and taken into account, included within this. And definitely there's a need for equal experiences. So seamlessly integrating all these different environments and the virtual into the physical. So off-site employees, they simply cannot have a degrading or a degraded work experience compared to being in the workplace. There needs to be some equality there. So overall, we see a much heavier reliance on healthy virtual collaborative platforms. But I think big tech is going to have to be part of this. So in the workplace itself, obviously touchless, hands-free technologies, focusing on reducing the physical contact, I should say, with high-touch areas such as door handles, lift or elevator buttons, handrails, light switches. These areas which we kind of naturally we touch without thinking, or did up till now, and they're mediums through which infection spreads easily. And this is going to be a high priority to reduce the risk of viral spread. These can be overcome with hand gestures, facial recognition, voice activation, many such technologies which are being talked about widely. But as the workspace does evolve in this state of perpetual beta, the reliance on data is going to be there to make these informed decisions. So data collection can be enhanced through various technologies, and safety concerns and maintaining physical distancing will mean that organisations do have to rely on data to make these decisions. And there's going to be a reliance on occupancy data from the various integrated apps. We've worked with a company recently who do this kind of thing, and they're building more functionality into their workplace apps, so they can see from the overall data what the occupancy is, maybe in the different meeting rooms. You may get meeting room capacities reduced, but how is that meeting room used versus another one? And should that be spun into the cleaning program, so some rooms get more frequently sanitized? And then just looking at the whole occupancy of the floor in the cleaning programs, all these different things intertwining. There's one solution we want to touch on, which we've touched on before in these webinars, but the touchless locker solution, so Hot Locker Agile, as we call it. This is available now. It has been for a while, but this suits in a non-shared locker situation. You don't even have to touch the locker to claim that and open it. So this is technology that's available, and it kind of covers this trend very well. But these are different technologies from different industries and different complexities that have come together to really make the workplace smarter and give us data which we can make decisions. So that's covered that one, and I'll hand over to Nick now, Nick Steadman, to take us on.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, good afternoon. My name is Nick Steadman. I'm VP Marketing here at SpaceStore. And if you're just joining us, this is the 8th session in our Insights Live series. And today we're focusing on workplace trends that will be accelerated post-Covid-19. Any questions? Please put the details in the question and answer box at the bottom as we go through, and we'll be pleased to address these at the end. So looking at the 4th trend, which we believe will be accelerating, which is human connection. Society was already suffering from a loneliness epidemic. Technology was supposed to connect us, but in some ways it's actually driven us further apart. Human connection is a valued luxury, and the office has become an important site for making and maintaining those connections. Workspaces should be designed for fostering good relationships between people, the creation of communal spaces where we can remember our shared humanity. Now, all this was true even before COVID-19. So how is it going to change now? Now, undoubtedly, isolation has exacerbated the loneliness epidemic. We've been talking about the human connection being the luxury, but it's become even more precious. In the words of Timothy Leary, who's an American psychologist, he said a few years ago, actually, that in the future, physical meetings will be sacred. And we see that played out right now. After 8 to 10 weeks of lockdown, depending where you are in the world, we have much, much higher levels of loneliness and anxiety, depression, etc. Everyone's missing each other, and we're feeling the need for real, true human connection, and proving that this just cannot be replicated virtually. And because of this, we see the human connection being the #1 purpose for going back to the workspace, to provide or create this enriching human connection. there will be other reasons for going back to maybe a sense of belonging or to get your fix of company culture, maybe to complete certain tasks. And we'll cover all this later, but we feel that this will be the number one reason to go back to the workspace, the human connection. We do see this changing to start with, though. The current circumstances will probably drive this form of connection to become more intentional rather than by chance. This will be driven by the safety aspects of physical distancing, which has become government law in most countries. This will mean there will be lower levels of occupancy and less people to connect with. And we do see a reduction or change in this spontaneous connection. But we do see a massive benefit when people from different departments do bump into each other by chance. There's a great quote from Andy Swan, who we work with. He's an expert in the complex relationships between people. He said that great ideas come from overlapping perspectives. And these spontaneous or collaborative moments, if they can be fostered within the workspace environment, they're hugely important and they simply cannot be replicated virtually. We've almost overnight transferred from holding our meetings face-to-face to Zoom. And it works well generally. It works well when there's rules for speaking, when it's simple like that. But what hasn't worked so well is these social interactions. Many companies have given up on happy hours. Maybe you're not holding so many family Zoom meetings as you did before. It does, for some reason, it doesn't quite work to hold these virtually. So we think that this will become a focus to re-engineer those spontaneous connections again and make sure that the time that we spend in the office generates more of these quality interactions. So back to Alex now for an update on building communities.
Thanks, Nick. And building communities I see as very closely interrelated to what you've just been discussing, the human connection. And if you like, they're two sides of the same coin. You have the human connection, which you might call the employer's perspective, so the employee's perspective, and then you have building communities, which is the organization's perspective. So really what we're talking about here is the development of human connections and the building of great communities or neighborhoods within the office. And these have to be curated. We've seen people striving to design an authentic space in which people feel a sense of belonging and a connection to the company's mission and the physical representation of the brand organization. Once these communities have grown, knowledge transfer and collaboration happens organically within them. It leads to great innovation and competitive advantage. And for example, one of the questions that I've seen many organizations discussing is, how will new starters go through the onboarding process? How will they team in a distributed environment? Sorry, is my audio crackling?
It's poor, but keep going, we can make it out. I think we might have lost Alex, so I'll pick up from where he's left off. So once we have these communities in the workspace, then knowledge transfer and collaboration just happens within them. And for example, how new starters go through the onboarding and become embedded in the team of a distributed environment if these communities don't exist. A speaker on a recent panel that we hosted said that the real attraction to coming to the office is going to be about the community. People need to feel part of something greater than themselves. They need to be connected to the company's vision and the culture. So how's this going to change? That we feel that this trend will elevate as one of the most important roles that the workspace has to play, as we were saying earlier. And we have to balance this increased longing and desire for community and culture with the safety aspect of social distancing. And another quote, you have to look at it from the perspective of the workplace being really important for you to do all those things that aren't done so easily from home. And I think it will reaffirm the importance of the workspace when it comes to collaboration, building social capital, and using the workspace as the physical manifestation of a company's brand. So the value and importance of the workspace forming the tangible nucleus of a company's identity, the foundational platform to create the communal experience that is unique to a particular brand. Another quote, the workspace is continuing to be the accelerator of a company's culture. So we think all of these are so important when referring to this trend of building communities. Over to Andrew now for an update on health and well-being.
Thanks, Nick. That's good. So a bit of an outline on this trend. I think we're all aware of the critical nature of well-being, health and mindfulness, all these critical things, and fostering a greater sense of well-being amongst our teams is going to be critical, and that's done through a range of different activities and amenities. There's team exercise programs, team activities and education around this topic, lots of ways to do it. I guess we're interested in how it would change, and along, of course, with the focus of the employee safety side, that health and safety will continue to be paramount, but safety, it's become a life or death matter recently, and creating an aura of safety and hygiene in the workplace, it's got to be our first immediate reaction. That's the key thing. And there's a certain perception of this as well through physical barriers that we've seen a lot of, higher workstation dividers and sneeze guards. There's visual cues, wayfinding, many different ways that the safety side can be promoted. But then there's the psychological aspect of well-being, and being mindful that all of us actually have been through what you could say is we've absorbed, you might say, a great shock level in the recent months. It's an experience we've all gone through, we've all endured it, and that's been massive and not so great for some people. There's obviously people that have had a huge impact from losing lost ones, losing loved ones, right through to those of us that have just been working from home with no major effect. But that's something we've experienced, and we need to firstly get through that. But how are we going to feel and how are we going to act as we get through that and come out the other side? Adrienne Rowe, we had on a panel discussion recently, and she cited that the more we can think of each other as humans and having that feeling side and really understanding each other in a deep way, the better off we'll be in all of this. So we've got the physical safety and well-being as well, fighting the risk of the virus spread, and an increased responsibility both personally for sanitisation, but also the corporate responsibility, if you like, that's on the organisation. And clearly new cleaning and hygiene protocols will be brought in, will be introduced in that way, and that needs to also cover not just where I work, but the shared and collaborative and hospitality type spaces. So the whole workspace is protected, if you like, from this point of view. The other thing is, can we make cleaning visible? Instead of cleaning outside work hours, and Chris has put a comment on this, kind of alluding to this already on the chat, but make it almost a celebrated event, or maybe someone assigned to take care of this. Maybe there'll be some tech innovation coming through where a clean surface has got the clean particles are coloured or visibly different, so you can see that a surface is clean and hygienic and have that assurance. So I think assurance and confidence has a lot to do with it, and how we feel about ourselves and the space we're in. The 6 foot office has been spoken about a lot. As maybe one of the earliest reactions that hit the news in the post-COVID scenario. I guess the question there is it sustainable? As more people return to work in a safe way, will that continue beyond the immediate return, and how long will that be? Clearly this is a lot down to mindset, how I feel in the space and how that might change immediately. We totally accept there's something for the now, the near, something that's right for now, and that will transition over time. we wanted to touch on some products we're launching very soon, which help with this perception of safety and security. But not only that, they give a long-term solution. It's not just something for now which gets discarded. But the Vista range really has been in development anyway, but we think is a perfect fit for this current situation, where people are looking for a solution that works, yes, for now, but it also meets the demands of a modern workplace where design is paramount. And we're not going to sacrifice the overall design feel and how culture building that is for something second rate. We need to do both. We need to cater for the design and overcome the virus and engender a sense of health and well-being. So back to you, Nick, to cover the trends that we feel are perhaps a bit more challenged at the moment.
Thank you, Andrew. So we've looked at 6 trends which we see accelerating in the post-COVID workspace. What we also want to do is to look at some of the trends which may not be so likely to accelerate, or even possibly go backwards in this situation which is being described as the new normal. We've examined conversations we've had with a number of companies we work with, companies highly influential in their workspace, in their environment, and we've also talked to other influencers of workspace and the whole human psychology of people at work. And we feel that nothing has truly gone away. However, we do believe that some things will be challenged, albeit temporarily, by the current workplace situation. And we've identified 4 of our current trends that may be currently taking a backseat, but we think they'll be back soon. The first one is sustainability. Climate change is a huge issue facing the world, and we're all finding more sustainable ways of living and working to a greater or lesser extent. So what's changed here? Well, long term, nothing. This is still a fundamental issue which will become ever more important. But we have seen some of these requirements rested as companies strive to get employees back to work as cheaply and quickly as possible. We see the prevalence of plastic sneeze screens, often made from acrylic, which is a product very difficult to recycle. Surfaces are being chosen for their antibacterial or antimicrobial qualities. And these can deflect viruses, but they're not very environmentally friendly. Copper is being considered for its ability to kill germs. However, copper takes a lot of energy and resource to mine. As well as the materials used, the use of space will have an impact on sustainability. With less staff in the space, the footprint and associated energy cost per person will increase. Also, as many work from home, the efficiencies associated with a multi-occupied office are going to be lost. This may, of course, be offset by the reduction in travel. Nobody really knows the extent of the impact at the moment. The immediate focus is for property owners and developers and owners of companies to get people back to work safely. However, sustainability and well-being needs to be considered too. Some companies are choosing their return to work solutions very carefully and are working even harder to achieve this. However, in some cases, sustainability goals have been challenged for the short term. Another trend which may have changed and gone backwards is the hospitality trend. And we feel this is perhaps under challenge at the moment. What's been clear is that we've seen influences from the hospitality sector in the workspace creeping in over the last few months. We've seen the blending of elements of sports clubs or cafes, restaurants, hotels maybe, within the workspace to give a kind of more luxurious, more softer look, maybe more homely even. So how's this going to change? Well, we see the possibility of the look and feel of the office space changing, especially in the immediate return. There'll be a greater focus on surfaces being easy to clean and hygienic. There could be a move towards a harder, colder aesthetic. Cleaning will be a big consideration, especially in the short term. We see this happening in schools right now as they prepare for the kids coming back. Every piece of furniture in a space is being evaluated. It has to be cleaned daily. So they're removing any piece of furniture that isn't being used right now. And we think the same is going to be happening in the workspace. So in the short term, the trend for a softer, more luxurious, homey look could go back in reverse. We could go back to a more officey look, but we feel this is only going to happen in the short term. No one really wants their workspace to look like a hospital. And as we get a greater understanding of this virus and how to control it, we think that it won't last long. Another interesting viewpoint in this, and it's just a consideration, is that we're all now so used to working from home that we may actually want to see a different look when we do come back to the office. We may not want it to look quite like home, like we used to do. We might want to we may want it to look a bit more officey perhaps. So these are two things which are changing, and we think that they may be affected just temporarily, but we think that actually these are going to return and come back. Alex is going to take us through a couple more. So back to Alex on this.
That's great. Thanks, Nick. And thanks for your patience, everybody. Sorry about my audio issues earlier. So the next trend we wanted to look at, which I see as being challenged in the post-COVID workplace, is the big trend we've seen towards co-working. And this has been a hugely expanded phenomenon in the last few years. Whilst the original concept for some of the co-working providers was aimed at freelancers and maybe startup organizations, we've now seen the co-working model being applied to larger corporates in quite an extensive way in many of the locations we work in globally. And many are beginning to adopt this new style of working using the flex space. I think this is going to be an interesting one to watch, and I'm expecting to see some big changes from some of the co-working providers and maybe some new co-working providers emerging. Because from the conversations we're hearing, the ability to work anywhere, or as I'm hearing nowadays, untethered working, will mean that you won't necessarily have to go into the office. You won't necessarily want to take the risk of using public transport to travel into the inner cities, as Andrew outlined earlier. But maybe access to a co-working space nearby will mean if you haven't had a great work from home experience, maybe there were physical challenges with your home environment or other family members or Wi-Fi challenges, all the things that we've been hearing about from friends and colleagues. Maybe if you haven't had such a great experience, you can still work near home rather than travel into the city. And one of the other big challenges which I think co-working providers are going to have to overcome is, as we've already mentioned earlier, is this a safe space for me to come to? Particularly in an environment where you're maybe working alongside other organizations, not a dedicated space to your own organization. I think there's going to be a big challenge around trusting of your fellow co-workers. The accepted norm in the new workplace, in the workplace of today, is, if you've got a cough or a cold, you won't come to the workplace, and there's going to be a trust between co-workers, particularly people in your immediate team that you know well, that you can trust people that they haven't come to work with any of those symptoms. But would you have the same level of trust for somebody who is maybe not part of your company culture? You don't know them, or maybe don't know them so well. So will this result in a decline in the use of co-working spaces? Will they be trusted as much as a company's own workspace? And maybe off the back of this, will this reason cause them to change more in look as a reactive response to the current situation? Particularly, we would expect to see a decline in maybe city centre co-working spaces, and maybe an increase of suburban or regional hubs. So there's some interesting questions, and I think some interesting times ahead in the co-working environment. And then finally, I wanted to move to the amenity-rich spaces, which is another trend that we identified this year, which really we've seen inspired by the success of particularly some of the Silicon Valley tech firms and many of the co-working providers providing a far wider and more enticing spread of amenities than an average office. A huge bounty of exceptional perks which help companies differentiate themselves from rivals in attracting the best talent and work towards boosting the user experience in that space. So for example, shared canteens, gyms or restaurants, yoga rooms, beer on tap. But one of the big challenges we're seeing is that many of these things are shared environments or shared equipment. And I think it's going to, and typically also very social spaces. So I think it's going to be very difficult for employers, for businesses, to implement the physical distancing that's possible and the cleaning rotas that are possible. So we wonder whether maybe some of these, and some of the feedback we've had from the clients we work with, is that maybe some of these amenity spaces are going to be paused in the immediate return to work. Maybe they're not going to be available in the short term, or only available to a limited number of staff at any one time, particularly while the rota for infection control and cleaning starts to take place. But maybe that will just be a short-term impact, and we'll see these returning once people start to figure out the best way of keeping a space safe. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch again. Now, Andrew, I'm going to hand over to you. If you could just give us a wrap up. I think we're nearly done for today. And also, as we're going through, I'd like to encourage all the attendees in the audience to keep popping some questions in. We're going to answer those in a minute or two. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Alex. That's good. So here's a bit of a summary just to show what we've covered today. So the accelerating trends and the challenged trends, you might say. And clearly this is as we know it today. So we haven't got a crystal ball. We're just bringing together lots of comments from our great client base, from lots of different people across the industry and across all verticals really. And obviously there's government guidance coming through as well. So these will no doubt change and flex as we go forward, but this is as we see it today. And just to give everyone a bit of a view of all the feedback we've collated, we'll be closely watching these as we go forward, and we'll communicate on them further. We did want to just remind everyone of this series. We've got another thought leadership conversation panel discussion next Thursday, so that's a week today. These have been immensely popular and very insightful, and we're going to have some great speakers soon to be announced on that next week, so we'd very much invite you to that. It'd be great to see everyone there again. These have been, particularly the panel discussions, very, very good to have different perspectives and from different countries and different minds, so designers, talking with futurists and workspace experts. So getting a mix is very good, and we've seen tremendous value in these ourselves. And just on questions and answers, so we've had a few come in through the chat, which is great to see. And some of them we're probably not qualified to answer on with any authority, but I just thought I'd pick one up from Catherine in Ireland, just regarding the touchless locker solutions, and can clients change their lockers to the touchless system? That's a great question. We've looked into that. So obviously with lockers, you go from anything from a standard key lock right through to a high-tech system. But some of the systems that clients would already have, so a digital-based system, there is a chance that that's any battery operated or hardwired swipe card system can be changed from a public, so a non-assigned use, to a private use, so people can have the reassurance of, actually, I've now got my locker, it's not something I'm sharing with someone else. But also, in terms of transitioning to touchless, it could be that a system can be changed over. It may need new locks, or even have a conversation with us. We've got many ideas, we've implemented very many strategies over the years of how you might be able to make use of the lockers you've got without having to have the outlay of a complete new set. There's another question here from Pippa as to how long will a need for physical distancing last, and will it reduce slightly, but will a key factor in future, but still be a key factor, sorry, in the future office layouts? Now, that very much ties in with what we've had a comment here from Raymond, who's said, how permanent do we foresee the tenancies in 2 or more years? Well, clearly we don't know everything and all the answers, and as we've said, it's going to be a mix of response. There's local authority or government guidance, and obviously we're a global company, and that's different in each state in the US and different again in Europe to the UK. So that certainly has a impact. You've then got what the company themselves want to implement, and how a company might come up with a policy themselves for how they're going to cope with it. And we're seeing a lot of companies actually going above and beyond to protect their workforce and clearly there's a corporate responsibility, but seeing some companies really going the extra mile and going further than what they're obliged to do to create this safe space. But interested to bring in Alex or Nick on that in terms of the future and how long we see some of these things lasting for. Alex, have you got any comments there?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the there was a point that came up on one of our panel discussions with Randy Winery, the VP of Design for Fidelity Investments across the United States, and I thought he made some interesting comments around this whole subject. There's going to be the legal and governmental requirements. This is what we have to comply with, but then there's also going to be the employee experience angle of it, and I think I wonder whether we can probably all empathise with what he said, which was we will have the opportunity to go back to the office at some point, but I think we're probably going to find it's a bit of a sterile experience to start off with. If we're physically distanced from our employees, if we're wearing a face mask, the human to human connection that maybe we've been craving and we're looking forward to, it may not be as rewarding as it used to be. So I think the how long that physical distancing lasts is going to be twofold. It's going to be the regulatory requirements, but I think people will also start to figure out the best way of interacting with their co-workers, and I think we'll also build in confidence around the cleaning regimes that have to be put in place, so that people will find ways of returning to the workplace in a safe way, so that that physical interaction, that human to human connection can continue. Perhaps Nick Stedman can comment on that. And I think there's also a question around the hospitality trend that came in from one of the attendees.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make on the physical distancing is that at some point the need for that will end. We don't know exactly when that will be. It may not be very long, and we may see the office design being influenced not so much by physical distancing, but more by the amount of people working from home. So as we come out of this experiment, as we were talking about earlier, we find that most of us can work from home. May not want to do it all the time, but we'll do it an awful lot more. That will mean that when we come to the office, we'll be coming to the office for different things. And so the office design would need to be done with that in mind. We're seeing that the changes being made for physical distancing, some companies are assuming that these will be fairly short-lived and are not prepared at this point in time to invest much into that. Some are investing, and as Andrew said, they're investing in solutions which can fit the need right now, and that can be transferred to the space as it evolves, as we get a greater understanding of this situation.
I'll just jump in on the comment from Matt Phillips there. Great comment, Matt, and I 100% agree with you that I think one of the biggest challenges of the distributed workplace as we're seeing it developing for the future is going to be the change in management style and the understanding of what productivity looks like. And I think there's going to be a massive shift from the old culture of presenteeism and maybe an unsaid kind of expectation or culture within some organizations that working from home is somehow slacking or not real work. And I think people are going to understand that productivity is much more results based, and the management styles and structure needed to encourage that is going to be quite different from some of the traditional management styles. So I think it's going to be a big challenge for organizations to rapidly upskill and develop their management styles to encourage and support and foster that. So that's a great question, Matt. Thanks for bringing that in. Any other questions, Andrew, that you're spotting?
No, that's good, Alex. Yeah, certainly interesting views from Matt there. There's just one further question that came in, as to whether the pre-COVID trends will return as before once there's a vaccine in place. Well, I think we're sure that some will, but I think at the same time, we have to acknowledge that the world has probably, in some respects, changed forever, hasn't it? We're not going to do some things the same as we did, and you've already alluded to it, but the whole home working piece is very interesting, and that changes, as we've said, person to person. It's a very individual situation, but I know some people have found it great and very liberating not to have that commute. And yeah, you've got that at one end of the spectrum and right through to the other end. But I think we're all going to still need that injection of culture, of human connection, collaboration when we go back to the office. So I think we'll certainly see some more trends emerging around the office space itself. And as Nick mentioned, what it's actually being used for, because when you're going to the office, to the workplace, that's going to be you're going to be going there to do some specific tasks, and the value of just going to the office to sit at a desk and do a task that could be done from home, I think will be called into question. So I think more than ever, the challenge for designers and all of us related to the workplace is how can we really inspire the future workplace with the needs that are going to arise, and as always, can we see ahead and start developing solutions and products and designs that cater to that. Well, that's good, and I think we should wrap up now. We're slightly over time. Appreciate everyone coming on. We will be in touch with a follow-up pack, and hope this has been relevant and insightful. And again, just a reminder, please join us next week. It's going to be a fantastic further roundtable, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.